You talked about millions of people being impacted by anxiety. I came across this stat that, opened my eyes. Anxiety disorder affects over 40 million adults in the US alone, making anxiety one of the most common mental health conditions. Yet, most people dealing with it believe something is personally wrong with them. From your experience, why does anxiety feel so intense and convincing even when people, they know they're safe?
Yeah. Well, I refer to chronic anxiety as a trick, and that's embedded in the titles of a couple of my books. Something like panic disorder, even generalized anxiety disorder. People experience symptoms, physical symptoms like my heart racing, my breathing gets labored, my fingers and toes feel numb. They have all kinds of thought symptoms. Am I going to faint? What if I start acting like a crazy person? What if I start running amok in the mall? They have all of these symptoms and they literally get tricked into treating them as accurate present signs of danger, that these mean something terrible is going to happen, when what they really mean is, I'm very afraid right now. I don't necessarily have any good reason to be afraid. I'm very afraid. And most times when we're afraid, we tend to assume, if I'm afraid, then I'm in danger. And so they feel afraid, they realize they're afraid, they think that means they're in danger, and so they figure they need to protect themselves, to rescue themselves, to flee the scene, to fight off the symptoms somehow. And then they get badly stuck because with chronic anxiety symptoms, this is literally the core of it. What you resist will persist. The more you tell yourself, don't worry about it, the more you try and say, calm down, the more you try and argue with your thoughts, the more you try and protect yourself against those physical sensations, the worse they get. It's a vicious cycle. So, why do people have so much trouble controlling it? They try to control the wrong things. They try to control their thoughts. They try to control their physical sensations. We don't control that stuff. And the harder we try, the worse it feels. What we can control, what's useful to control in an anxiety episode is my action, what I do. I can control more or less what I do with my hands and my feet and my voice. I can't control my thoughts. I can't control my physical sensations. And particularly with my thoughts, the more I try and control them, the more I try and refute them, disprove them, make them shut up and go away. Well, now I'm just arguing with myself. And when a person's arguing with themselves, that's such an evenly matched contest, it can go on forever. And that's what happens. They keep arguing with themselves to no good result. And what they'll be better off doing is focusing on how they respond to the fear rather than trying to combat or oppose the fear.
Yeah. And, when panic or anxiety strikes, a lot of people assume that something is very seriously wrong with them. There's a stigma associated with it. Can you speak to any, common misunderstandings or stigmas about anxiety that may keep people almost paralyzed in that state?
Well, one of the big issues, the thing that still makes it seem to a lot of sufferers that they're one of a very small number. They're one of a very tiny group of weird and peculiar people that have experiences that nobody else does. Is most people, and this is still true today, not quite as bad as it was 10 years ago, maybe, but still largely true. People feel embarrassed about their anxiety. People feel ashamed of their anxiety, and they tend to want to keep it to themselves. And so you got 40 million Americans all thinking they're the only one or maybe one of 10 in the tri-state area, and they keep it to themselves and they don't hear anybody talking about it because for the same reason that they're not talking about it. And so the more you keep it to yourself, the more you tend to think you're just one very isolated case and there's something really troubled about you that doesn't pertain to the rest of the population. That's the worst outcome of the stigma, the shame and embarrassment. It makes people seem like they're really unique.
Do you see it more in men or in women, or is it even across the board?
Historically, this is more even today than it was when I began. Historically, it was always thought of as a problem for which women much more frequently than men come in and seek help for this. Now, I think the numbers today, it's not quite 50-50, but they're a lot closer to that. There's a few reasons why women seemed overrepresented in the population of people who come to a mental health clinic with anxiety. One is, in general, women tend to be more willing to seek help across the board. And so they were more represented there. The second reason was that there's a big overlap with substance abuse and anxiety disorders. A lot of people with panic disorder try and medicate it with alcohol and drugs. Sometimes people start in the other direction. They're abusing alcohol. They begin to have panic attacks as a result. Men were much more likely to present to the mental health system and get a diagnosis of substance abuse rather than panic disorder, which kind of altered the numbers as well. So maybe a slight preponderance among women, but not nearly as much as the raw data would suggest.
And for someone who's scared of their own anxiety symptoms like racing heart, dizziness, shortness of breath, what would you want them to understand about what their body is actually doing?
Well, I'd want them to understand that their body is producing the same effects, the same sensations that it would produce if a big tiger appeared across the street. Their body is gearing up to get ready to run away from or fight off that tiger. It's speeding up your heart rate and pumping adrenaline into your system so you have more energy with which to fight or run away from the tiger. It's changing blood flow in your body. It's moving the blood that's normally close to the surface, moving it deeper inside the body into your core, giving you these peculiar sensations of numbness in the extremities as the blood moves away. The reason it's doing that is if a tiger starts ripping at your arm, the less blood you have in your arm, the less blood you're going to lose. Your breathing changes because you want to literally hyperventilate to give you more energy for that kind of struggle. It's doing everything that would be really useful to do if you had to fight off a predator. The only difficulty is there's no predator.